Gorst's unsettling suggestion remained with Captain Dumas long after the three had separated. Kentrell did not yet know what to make of the notion that somehow Juris Khan had reacted to Motsi's death, but the implications did not bode well. The Sin had been able to offer any other idea that sufficiently explained the reaction did not help either. Despite that, the Vigerai had not completely accepted Gorst's concerns that their host hid some secret from them, and neither could Kentrell. However, the captain had to admit to himself that a tremendous part of his own reluctance had to do with the honors Lord Khan had bestowed upon him, especially the upcoming marriage to his daughter. As for Quoth Sin, his reasons for reluctance were even more obvious. The vast collection of Ure's magical library lay open to him for as long as he had the good graces of the elder ruler. Sleeping on it did little good for Kentrell, for even his dreams turned to the troubling development. In truth, he welcomed the unexpected knock on his chamber doors, for the noise stirred him from a dream in which Juris Khan proved to be Gregis Mozzi in disguise and Iktana, the willing lover of the masked villain. Although he hoped that would be Khan's wondrous daughter at the door, Captain Dumont instead found himself facing a rather pensive Albert. Kentrell's first fear was that some of the other men had gone missing, but the younger mercenary quicker erased that fear. Unfortunately, in its place, he presented one that in some ways disturbed the commander even more. Captain, men want to leave. No one goes into the city until I say so. Albert shook his head. Captain, they want to leave Ure. They want to go home, and I think they should be able to. This time, Kentrell could not think of no good reason to hold them back. He had a life offered to him here, but the others wanted him to return to the Western Kingdoms. They might have even had their rewards by now, if not for his own hesitation. Alright, give me a few days. I'll see that our host makes sure each... Now, Albert looked even more uncomfortable. Captain, Jodis and Orlef have already talked to him. Kentrell almost seized the white-haired mercenary by the throat and then fought back the impulse before he could betray himself. When? When did they do it? Just a little while ago. I found out myself after they came to me. They said they told his lordship that they had to go, and would be still granting them that which he promised. And Khan said that he would? He listened to them. He hugged each like a brother, and promised that every man would have a full sack. There existed no doubt in Kentrell's mind that the fatherly ruler had done just that. Yet another example of graciousness that made it difficult to fathom what tie existed between the sanctity monarch and the mysterious Mati. The captain leaned on a nearby chair, trying to organize his thoughts. What could he do, though, but accept their departure as wisely and kindly as Juris Khan had? After all, by rights, they could do as they please now. Their contract with Sin had ended long ago. Can't say I blame them, he finally responded. And they're probably safer out in Ure, at least for now. So how long before you all leave? They want to go when next it's day beyond Namir, Captain. I'd say that's basically tomorrow. Albert straightened. I'm not going with him, sir. You're not? The plowboy face lit up. Captain, I thought about it a lot after the last time I mentioned leaving. Under you, I've learned more than I ever would have back in my village. I've got family there like everyone else has somewhere, but they knew I might not return for a long time, if ever. I'd like to stay on a while longer after all. He grinned. Leastwise, I can always go home saying I served under a prince. The words brought some relief to Kentrell. You sure you don't want to go with them? My mind's staying made up for the time, sir. Alright, I'll see that they're sent off right. They've done well. You've all done well. A grin as great as any Gorse had ever given spread across Albert's youthful visage. Appreciate that, Captain. My lord, I'll be happy to volunteer to escort them to the other gates in the kingdom, though. The task seemed simple and safe enough. Even with the yet unexplained disappearance of the three men, Kentrell still suspected that, like him, each had been lured to a more deserted area, then knifed. The odds were their bodies would never be found. Still, so long as Albert kept in the wide open where crowds could see him, he'd be safe. I'll be glad to give you that pleasure, lad, and thanks for the loyalty. Giving his commanding officer a sharp salute, Albert left. Kentrell started back to his bed, but his thoughts would now not leave his men. He could not help wondering if even one of the vanished trio could have been saved if he had let the men go home sooner. To die on the field of battle was one thing for a mercenary. To end up tossed into an alley with a dagger in your spine was another. For that matter, Kentrell did not even know if the men had actually been slain. It was possible that they still lived as prisoners. Or prisoners? Captain Dubont bolted upright. He knew of one way to tell. Kentrell found the necromancer in one of the rooms farthest away from the others. A special request, it appeared, from Zael himself. The spellcaster did not respond to his quiet knock, but something made the fighter certain that he would find Zael within. Kentrell knocked again, this time quietly calling out the other's name. "Enter!" came the unmistakable, hollow voice of Humbart Wessel. Slipping inside, Kentrell discovered the necromancer seated on the floor, his legs folded in, his hands on his knees, and his eyes staring straight at the ivory dagger that hung suspended in the air before him. Zael's vast cloak lay on the bed. Atop a small wooden table to the side, the skull had been set so it faced the doorway. "Hello, lad," it cheerfully greeted him. "He does this 2 or 3 times a day if he can. Mine completely disappears from the world." "How long does he stay like this?" whispered the captain. The necromancer's left hand suddenly moved. At the same time, the dagger dropped toward the floor, only to be caught by the hand. "As long as need be," Zael remarked, quickly unfolding his legs, then rising in one smooth action. The skull chuckled. "Just in case, though, he leaves me pointed at the door. Anyone comes in, I give the alarm." Zael gave Humbart a dark look. "And I'm still waiting to hear it." "'Tis only our good comrade, Kentrell Dumont, boy. I recognize his voice right away." "Well, I have nothing against you, Captain. What Humbart fails to remember is that you might not be alone. Or you might not be even you. There are spells of illusion that can fool almost anyone, even the overconfident dead." The slim, pale man retrieved his cloak. "Now, what is it I can do for you?" "I came because an idea occurred to me based on your own experiences." "And that would pertain to?" The captain found his gaze drifting to the skull. "3 of my men have never returned from the city. The rest, by the way, are making plans to leave come the morrow. Before that happens, though, I may need them to plan a rescue." He had Zael's full attention now. "A rescue? You have a reason to believe that the missing ones still live?" "That's where you come in. I remember all of a sudden you said that the reason you earlier failure to do with Gregis Mozzi actually still being alive. Then you used a different spell to locate his general surroundings. And you wish me to attempt to do the same for those in your command now lost." The necromancer frowned and thought, "I can see no reason why it should not work. and perhaps it may yet shed some light on the shadowed land. Yes, Captain, I would be glad to try. How soon can you start? Zael reached for the skull, placing it in the pouch, hidden by his cloak. I cannot do anything until we find some personal item, or, better yet, a hair or clipping from any of the three. It'd be prudent at this time to visit the quarters they used. Doubting that anyone would question the company captain wanting to investigate the missing men's belongings for some clue to their disappearance, Kentrell readily nodded. That seemed all the necromancer needed to satisfy himself. With a wave of his hand, he indicated for the captain to lead on. In the most rare of circumstances for the mercenary, the kindness of their host had enabled each man of the hired company to have rooms of his own. Some, like Kentrell, had become so used to cramped quarters, or sleeping without a roof at all, that they barely made use of more than the bed. Others, meanwhile, had taken advantage of this situation to the point of where few items that they had lay scattered everywhere. Kentrell felt certain that they would find something useful in the rooms of all three, which made it all the more startling when, upon entering the first set of doors, they found no trace of habitation at all. When Kentrell had first stepped into his own chambers, he had not been able to imagine anyone else ever having entering them before. From the silky golden threaded drapes to the wide plush canopied beds, everything in sight had looked absolutely new. Both the bed frame and the elegant furniture had been meticulously carved from the finest oak, a wood that the captain could not have recalled seeing anywhere in the eastern Kyrgyzstan, then stained a dark, rich reddish brown. Besides the bed, the main room in his quarters came equipped with a sturdy bronze-handled cabinet, 4 chairs, and a pair of tables, the wide one possibly used for dining, and the other a small twin near the doorway. The filigreed walls had also been accented by a series of small but detailed tapestries that seemed to outline the entire history of Ure. Beyond the main room, the smaller of the 2 lesser chambers gave the occupant a place for personal care, including rarely seen plumbing, a true mark of wealth wielded by Lord Khan and his predecessors. The remaining room consisted of a pair of leather chairs, a tiny but no less elegant table, and a shelf filled with books. Out of mild curiosity, Captain Dumont had picked over the collection in his own chambers, but he knew that most of his men could not even decipher letters, much less read. Breck's room had been chosen first, and one quick survey of them led the captain to decide quickly that someone else had straightened up after the mercenary's disappearance. Breck had not been the most organized of fighters, and certainly not one of the cleanest. There should have been food, empty bottles, and more laying about. Even the bearded warrior's pack, which had been left in the palace during his sojourns down in the city, had vanished. This is most troubling, Zael quietly remarked. A quick hunt through the rooms of the other 2 brought the same unsettling results. All had been arranged as if they had never been occupied by the hardened mercenaries. Even Kentrell, who kept his quarters neater than most of his kind, could not match the cleanliness. He sought out Gorst, whom he found playing cards with Albert and 2 other men. The fighters rose as he entered the giant's quarters, but Kentrell quickly ordered them at ease. Who's been in Breck's rooms? Anyone? When all 4 shook their heads, all focused on Albert, whose own quarters sat next to those of the missing man. You've heard nothing through the wall or anything? Not since the last time Breck himself was in there. Letting them return to the game, Captain Dumont rejoined the necromancer. It did not please Kentrell to see that the generally calm Zael looked quite irked by what they had discovered. The palace has many servants, the latter solemnly proposed. They move with the silence and swiftness worthy of my brethren. But it is very possible that they removed the belongings for some custodial reason. Or they didn't expect the boys to return. countered Humbart from the pouch. Kentrell felt defeated, and even more anxious than ever. Is there nothing you can do then? Holding up the dagger, Zael muttered under his breath. The enchanted blade flared bright. The necromancer held the dagger before him, letting it sweep across the room. What are you up to? I'm trying to see if any useful trace was at all left behind. A single hair hidden under a chair, a scrap of cloth accidentally covered by a blanket. No sooner had he explained, however, than the necromancer lowered the blade in mild disgust. None of which I could find in this particular place. I am sorry, Captain. Maybe we can... Before Kentrell could finish, the door swung open and Atana appeared. Why, here you are. She swept toward the fighter, Zael seemingly non-existent. Kentrell accepted a swift kiss from her, then discovered himself being conducted out of the room. And you've changed back into that horrid old outfit. She... sounding more like a mother hen than the desirable enchantress at which he stared. You must dress before it's too late. Father already expects us there. Where? Kentrell could recall no urgent matter. Why? For a formal introduction to the court, of course. You must be known to everyone before you officially take up your roles Father promised you. It'd be bad form otherwise. But despite his uncertainties, despite the surmounting questions concerning Lord Khan, Captain Dumont found himself once again defenseless against the charms of the crimson-tressed princess. Atana had come to him clad in a white and green gown fit perfectly to her well-curved form and designed, as it seemed, with everything she wore, to utterly bewitch him. Now you mustn't, are you? She returned, guiding him to his own rooms. I'll wait for you, but you must hurry. This is very important for your future, Kentrell. Her eyes seemed to shine like jewels. And for ours as well. And against that last point, his final defenses fell. Away went any concerns about the secrets of Gregis Monsi and any subterfuge by Juris Khan, and any doubt that he would be Atana's slave forever. Despite some faint amusement concerning how completely overwhelmed the good captain had proven to be in the presence of Juris Khan's glorious daughter, Zael otherwise worried about the man. Kentrell Dumont surely had to feel caught between trust and betrayal, love and lies. Not trained as followers of Rathma were in the cultivation of control of emotions, the mercenary risked making a fatal misstep. Zael hoped that would not be the case, for he knew that the captain remained his best ally. The giant Gorse could be trusted, yes, but lacked some of Kentrell Dumont's battle-honed wits. As for Quoth Sin, if the Vizieri ever proved Zael's only hope, then surely they were all very much doomed. But doomed to what? The key, he suspected, had something to do with the three missing men. More and more the necromancer distrusted the notion that they had simply perished at the hands of common street thugs. No. He felt there had to be something darker, something more ominous going on. A check of the rooms inhabited by the other two missing mercenaries revealed the same lack of clues. Zael considered mesmerizing one of the servants into revealing what had happened to the men's effects, but not only most likely would earn him the watchful eye of their host, he could not also find any of the attendants. As the necromancer had remarked to Captain Dumont, they indeed moved as if trained by Zael's own people. A curious thing to think about livered servants. Yet another confounding piece of the puzzle whose image had yet to be divined. One hair. One piece of nail, he murmured as he finished his second search of the last set of rooms. Not so much to ask, but apparently too much to hope for. One single strand, one follicule, and he could have done as he had in the sanctum of Gregis Matzi. Zael did not like being thwarted by such minuscule things. Surely the forces that sought to keep the mortal world in balance did not intend such frustration. Zael only wished that he could have... The necromancer froze in the act of putting away the dagger, his mind suddenly aflame with the realization that he had been ignoring an entire path open to him all this time. Captain Dumont had actually brought it up, but focused on the mercenary officer's actual reason for coming to him, Zael had lost sight of it. The possible answer to all their questions shouted to be heard, and the spellcaster had been blithely deaf to it. When first Zael had sought the shade of Gregis Matzi, the latter had not been dead, but now the sorcerer was. Put down mercifully by the necromancer's party after discovering his horrific plight. I am a fool, he uttered. Are you looking for argument? Came Humbart's voice. He looked down at the pouch. Gregis Matzi's dead. Aye, and it's nothing to cheer. You hear me, lad? But Zael did not answer him, already departing the empty chamber for his own. He would step up the patterns, arrange the spell. No, his room would never do. During the course of their search, the captain had told Zael of Juris Khan's disturbing reaction during Sin's spell work. The necromancer suddenly wondered if seeking the ghost of the sorcerer would be a wise thing to do in the very sanctum of the one who had claimed, either erroneously or falsely, to have slain him. At the very least, it would pay to perform the spell elsewhere, and Zael could think of no better location than the mouth of the cave leading to where they had found and what had remained of the unfortunate mage. It took the necromancer a little time to retrieve what he needed from his quarters, and even less time to exit the palace by secret means. Zael had memorized the layouts of the edifice well, suspicion somehow that it would prove opportune later, part of a calling held in mistrust and apprehension among most folk. He had done so out of habit, too. One never knew when an overzealous official might decide to make his mark by capturing and disposing of the evil summoner of the dead. In some ways, escaping to the shaft filled Zael with some more reassurance. Born to the jungle lands, he was distracted by the confining qualities of any building, even one so massive as the palace. Now, outside, he felt as if he could breathe again. His wits seemed to grow sharper, so much so that the necromancer had to ask himself again why he had not thought to attempt the new summoning of Gregis Matzi once the latter had actually perished. So much time wasted. With the dagger to light his way, Zael headed several yards into the shaft. Finding a fairly open part of the corridor, the necromancer squatted down and began to draw patterns in the dirt floor with a glowing blade. The spell Zael planned would be virtually identical to the one he had to cast in Gregis Matzi's sanctum, the only difference being some added symbols to increase the odds of success. From out of the pouch he took Humbart's skull, 3 small candles, and a single strand of hair. Putting the skull to the side, Zael arranged the candles, then placed the hair in the center. After picking his finger and letting the necessary number of drops of blood onto one hair, the necromancer lit each one of the candles with the tip of his blade, then proceeded with the incantation. A slight breeze arose in the shaft. Zael quickly paused in his efforts, moving so as to block the wind before it could blow the hair away. Satisfied, he started his work anew. Suddenly the wind came at a display from the other side. Zael frowned, recalling no such turbulent currents during his previous visit. He sniffed the air, seeking the scent of magic, but found none. "Trouble?" asked the skull. "A minor nuisance." Taking some rocks, the spellcaster built a small wall to protect everything. Once more he began muttering. This time no wind interrupted. Zael focused his gaze on the hair, thinking of the dead sorcerer. As before, smoke arose above the hair where the blood touched it, the smoke then taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. As the necromancer advanced in his spell, the smoke swelled tremendously, growing as tall as a man and taking on him more and more of the characteristics of one. Zael could even make out a robed form, a man in a sorcerer's garb. The figure seemed to be reaching out, at the same time trying to speak. "Gregus Matzi, I summon thee!" Zael called. "Gregus Matzi, I conjure thee! I conjure thee! I call upon thee to walk the mortal plane for a time more, to come to me and share your knowledge." And, in the smoke, there formed an imposing black-haired figure more like Kentrell Dumont than either the necromancer or the Vigerai. Broad of shoulder, determined of face, Gregus Matzi looked not at all the viper he had been portrayed as, but more like a legendary protector. "Bit younger than when I last saw him," Humbart remarked. "Quiet." Zael had not yet bound the spirit to him, and until he did, any interruption risked breaking the summoning. He muttered more, then with the dagger drew a double loop in the air. Matzi's flickering ghost solidified, becoming so distinct that ignorant onlookers might have believed that they could actually touch him. In truth, had Zael worked hard, he could have created an even more substantial specter, but the necromancer had no need of such, and respected the dead mage too much to even try to bind him so. Soon, very soon, the spell would be complete. Then only Zael would be able to dismiss the shade without the most extreme effort. And as he became more a part of the mortal world, Gregus Matzi tried once more to speak. His mouth opened, but no sound escaped him. He continued to try to reach the other spellcaster, but moved as if caught in some thick fluid. Only the eyes managed to express anything defiant, and in them Zael saw an urgent need to communicate a message. Perhaps the very information he and the captain had sought. "Gregus Matzi, let air once more fill your lungs. Let speech be yours as I permit it. Let the words you wish speak to be heard." The dead sorcerer moaned. With grim determination, he thrust a finger towards Zael and at last forced a single word from his gaping mouth. "Diablo!" And as he spoke, Matzi's appearance transformed. His sorcerer's robe, briefly a resplendent blue and gold and covered with holy wards, burst into flames. The finger that pointed in warning shriveled rapidly, becoming skeletal. Likewise, the strong, determined visage melted away, leaving until the end the staring, warning eyes. "Zael, lad, look out!" Craggy, monstrous hands of the rock suddenly thrust forth from the walls, catching the necromancer from both front and behind. They forced the air from Zael's lung, and it was all he could do from keep from being immediately crushed to a pulp. In his struggles, he kicked apart the display. Now bound to the necromancer, the monstrous ghost of Gregus Matzi should have remained fixed where it was, but instead it instantly faded away, the single word of warning still on his lipless mouth. Zael still had the dagger, but with his arms clamped awkwardly to his body, he could not raise it. With the vestiges of breath left to him, the desperate spellcaster shouted out words of power. "Baraka, Dianos Tempari Barak!" He could not force any more out. A rumbling shook the cave, and somewhere distant Zael heard Humbart Wessel's voice calling to him. The necromancer blacked out.